On Your Side exclusive, we are hearing from the man in charge of recreational marijuana legalization here in New York State. Chris Alexander is the executive director of the Office of Cannabis Management, tasked with putting together all the regulations so that businesses can get certified to legally grow, distribute, and sell cannabis products. It is a big job, and we know that you have a lot of questions about how all of this will work. I spoke with Mr. Alexander earlier today. Chris, we're glad to have you on the show. You've already granted licenses to dozens of growers in the state, including quite a few here in our region. The other big part of this, though, is going to be sellers, right? The licensed dispensaries where people can go and actually purchase cannabis products. I know that you're now setting up workshops to help people who want to apply and get into that part of the business. Tell us about that process, and are you still on track to have legal sales before the end of this year?
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, great to be here with you. And yes, we are still on track. And this education engagement, this public engagement is really key and central to our mission of making sure that everybody, has meaningful opportunity to engage in the industry that we're building here. And so we're really proud to announce Get Ready, Get Set, a series of virtual listening sessions and workshops that will help, really encourage, prepare our future cannabis entrepreneurs with all the information that they need to prepare for licensure. So we're excited to announce this. We're excited to get folks in the room and give them some information that will be helpful to them in this process.
The New York Times had an interesting story a couple of days ago. You were quoted in it, and it looked at the issue of legacy sellers, people who have been illegally selling marijuana for a long time. And it was about the hope to, end that illicit industry, right, and bring them into this new business. And I think it brings up a question that's kind of hung over all of this is what happens if people just continue to buy on the black market because they think the product is too expensive, the tax is too high, too many regulations, etc. Is that a worry that you have moving forward?
Well, let me be clear. There's no way to fully remove the illicit market. That's never happened. That exists in every industry that we have. Tobacco. There's still an active illicit market in that realm as well, despite heavy regulation. I think what our role is as regulators is to create an ecosystem that's so friendly, that's so accessible to folks who want to operate and to consumers and patients that they no longer choose to engage with their illicit, dealer or whoever they've been getting cannabis from during Prohibition. We want to create accessible products. We want to create a range of different types of products, but also at a price point that makes sense, that allows folks to transition over. And what we've seen in other states is that when we tweak those dials around pricing, accessibility, variability, but also quality, that folks do make that transition. But it doesn't remove forever the illicit market. And so we're knowledgeable about that, but we want to do as much as we can to either incorporate those folks or otherwise turn the consumers who are currently visiting and buying products from those folks to transition over to a regulated, safer product.
Your agency, the Office of Cannabis Management, now also oversees medical marijuana in this state. And I talked recently with a respected neurosurgeon and a big proponent of medical cannabis. And he is worried about how recreational legalization is going to impact the medical program. And he says cost is still such a problem. I want you to listen to part of what he told me this week.
Over 50% of my patients cannot afford cannabis, cannot afford it. And they could use it, and they should be using it. They can afford narcotics and opioids because it's paid by the state or the insurance company, but they can't afford cannabis. So we have a dilemma here.
There's no doubt the state is going to bring in a ton of tax revenue off of the adult use recreational program. What is being done to make it more affordable on the medical side?
Well, we've already taken a couple of steps. I think the first thing was, removing certain product prohibitions that created quite a bit of an increase on cost that was being pushed down to the patient, such as allowing the sale of whole flower as opposed to, other products that require some more heavier processing by the organizations currently engaged in the sale of medical cannabis. I think that's one thing that we can do to help that we've done. We've removed the patient registration fee, which, although nominal, still, was a barrier to entry. And we're continued to commit. We have the continued commitment of making sure that the patient population remains served and has access to this medicine that definitely can improve their quality of life. And so I think that's, that we've done from a regulatory framework, we've definitely tried to tackle some of these issues. There still will, of course, and there's always been concern about the medical program surviving, but it remains a top priority for our office to make sure that patients are able to continue to participate in this program.
Finally, there are people watching right now who believe that you're part of something that's going to be negative for New York State, right? That we shouldn't have legal marijuana sales. I imagine that you're out there trying to convince people otherwise. What is your argument on why, at the end of the day, this is going to be good for the state?
The state engaged through the Department of Health in a study to weigh the potential negatives and positives from taking this step before legislation was passed and enacted. And I think, the finding was pretty clear that the benefits outweighed the negatives. And I think that's true. I think having a more regulated product, cannabis remains the most widely used illicit product in the country. With over 50% of Americans acknowledging that they've used cannabis at some point in their lives. We think that through regulation, through taxation, we can create a public health outcome that's far better from folks using regulated product than product that folks don't know where it's come from, what's been used to grow it. I think two, the revenue that's going to be generated from this will go to really important causes that will serve the people of New York in a significant way. And then three, I think believing that prohibition was a more beneficial approach than regulation, to me, it just misses the mark entirely. And what we've seen for folks concerned about certain areas around youth use and youth access, for example, people who are participating in the illicit market are not checking IDs, but we're creating a regulatory framework where licensees and those engaged in the sale of cannabis are required to do so. And there are many other steps that we have taken that we are able to take because we've decided to regulate that will have positive outcomes for the people in New York. And so we're committed to this mission. This has been decided already. And so my job is no longer to convince, but now is to implement in a way that meets the principles of the legislation. And that's what we're trying to do every day.
I know that there are a lot of steps still to be had as you go through this, and that there's a lot all happening at the same time. So we appreciate you taking some time to talk with us. Chris Alexander is Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management. Good to see you. We'd like to talk to you again as we get closer to the legal sales happening.
Absolutely.